For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eric Kaler. It's my great honor and privilege to serve as the president of Case Western Reserve University and to welcome you to Innovation Week 2023. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging our honored guests today. So first and foremost are the four recipients of the Faculty Distinguished Research Awards. They are Umit Gurkhan. Umit, stand up and be recognized by your colleagues. Ralph Harvey. Bob Kirsch. And Shenki. You will learn more about our award winners in just a few minutes. And I also want to welcome our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Vladimir Belovich. Dr. Belovich is the Faribault Massey Chair in Emerging Technology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And I look forward to hearing from him, as I know those of you who are in the audience and watching on live stream are as well. So, this is our second Innovation Week. Last year was our first time hosting it, and the campus community response was overwhelmingly positive. So we brought it back. This time here in the tank, and we do plan to make it an annual event. It is important that we as a university celebrate innovation because it is the heart of everything we do across all of our colleges and all of our programs. More broadly, it's important to put innovation front and center because it propels our civilization, and it also, we hope, diminishes or reverses the harm that we have done to our planet. So that brings me to our theme for Innovation Week this year, which is innovation as problem solving at scale. Indeed, I think we all understand the clock is ticking on the world's most pressing issues. And here at Case Western Reserve University, I'm convinced we have people who are thinking creatively, strategically, and critically every single day to solve those problems. We are a community that aspires to improve and enrich people's lives through research, innovation, and education. And as the person whose job it is to wake up every day to think about how we as an institution advance research and innovation, Michael Oakes, our Senior Vice President for Research and Technology Management, does that all of the time. It's a big job. He's also been the driving force behind Innovation Week, and at this time I'd like you to join me in welcoming Michael Oakes to the podium. Michael.
Thanks, President Kaler. It's such a privilege to be here and have our second Innovation Week. I'm really glad everyone could join us today. It's a beautiful day, so I'm glad people stayed after lunch. As President Kaler shared, Innovation Week is a celebration of our university's innovation. And this year, of course, it's problem solving at scale. Not just solving problems, but problem solving at scale. Get it out into the world where it's adopted, used, and hopefully very positive impact. Last year I used the word stoked. I'm still stoked about what we're doing in the next 4 days here at Innovation Week. A quick sample of events. Later today, we have Speed Mentoring workshop that will connect participants with inventors and entrepreneurs, speed dating. Also this afternoon, X-Lab from the Weatherhead School is hosting a Future of Baseball Fanship Innovation Challenge with our favorite team, Cleveland Guardians. I encourage you all to come back for a free lunch panels every day over the next 2 days, and you can find more information, of course, in your flyers. On Friday, very exciting day, this is our second annual 2-minute poster pitch presentation competition for students, grad students, and postdocs. Once again, put some money behind this. We're going to give out 10 $1,000 awards to the winners of this competition. I don't know if you've seen it last year, but it is amazing. These, I think I can say, young people are just so wildly interesting, creative, and impactful. So take a look at the schedule and please join us all week. It's critical, I think, to have events like this, to have some fellowship, to think about how we support, learn with and from, and inspire each other. The goal of Innovation Week, of course, is to elevate our work, impact, and of course our fellowship as a community of scholars, entrepreneurs, and hopefully really interesting and impactful people. I want to say a big thanks to all the people involved for putting this on, the people today doing the technology, the planning committee, and all the folks involved. If you'll indulge me, I want to say a special thanks to the key person in this, which is Ms. Jennifer Kuhl. Jennifer is really the operational core behind all of this. I could not have done this, none of us could, without Jennifer's superb collegiality, professionalship, and impact. And if she would come up, I have a small gift of appreciation for her. Jennifer, please recognize Jennifer. There she is. I did warn her I was going to embarrass her. Jennifer, thank you. The greatest thing about Case Western Reserve in my year or 14 months here is the amazing colleagues and professionals around. So, coming back to the focus of Innovation Week, our goal is to address and solve the world's problems. This, of course, can be solar energy, other kinds of interesting things, heart valves, and maybe even like, what did that white whale really mean? It's not just engineering, it's a mindset of thinking about and addressing problems. Some of you know I have strong thoughts about the role of a research university, great ones like Case Western Reserve, in society. I think it's time we really step up our game and assist in solving the problems, not just here in the academy, but outside. With modest changes, with a little bit of focus area, a little bit of energy, I can imagine a day when we become known as leading problem solvers, and if you run into someone in a grocery store or whatever, and you tell them you're a professor, instead of asking, what do you teach, a lot of they said, what problems do you work on? That's the role of a major research university professor, and we're trying to get there together. Consider a world where industrial and national security concerns ask big things of us every day, and we ask big things of those institutions. We have synergies, we work better together, we eliminate some silos, and we really work together. That's the role of a modern research university. The modern research university is a foundation to America's national security and tremendous R&D efforts. It is this innovation, this participation that drives appreciable impact. As some of you know, in a recent email to the research community, I talked about research being a team sport. That's what we're all doing here. It's a team sport. Inclusive excellence is the name of the game. We can't do it alone. So with that, let me now turn and recognize our 4 Faculty Distinguished Research Award recipients this year. You just got an introduction to them. President Kaler, would you rejoin me at the stage, please? Each of these people are leaders in their fields, and importantly, they understand the value of teamwork and multidisciplinary approaches to innovation. The Faculty Distinguished Research Award was established in 2013, and it's been given annually to faculty members who have made outstanding contributions on a grand scale through their research. It's among the top honors bestowed here at Case Western Reserve, for me, the top honor. And starting this year, I think this really matters, we're moving forward and each recipient will receive $10,000 to hopefully improve and give them a little bit of discretionary funds for the research enterprise. This investment reflects President Kaler's sincere commitment to supporting, recognizing, and investing in Case Western Reserve's amazing faculty. So what I'm going to do now is announce the honorees one at a time, and the person who's announced, please come up and join us on stage. And then we're going to have a short video. Won't surprise you, I did not want the faculty to give short presentations because that's 7 to 12 days long. So just 3-minute videos, and then if the awardee could stay with us on the stage, we'll have a photo op after it. So our first recipient is someone I've just been delighted to get to know and work with, which is Umit Gurkin. Umit, congratulations. Please join us on stage. Thank you all. Terrific. Yes. video.
In the United States, there is a big push for preventive medicine and to screen for disease as early as possible. We screen infants shortly after they are born for diseases and inherited genetic disorders. That way, we can be proactive in managing and treating disease. But these kind of systems don't exist in many other countries. So infants in those countries may suffer from treatable diseases that are undiagnosed. And sadly, many die before age 5. Sickle cell disease and hemoglobin disorders are among the most prevalent of those diseases. In some parts of the world, sickle cell can impact as many as 10% of all newborns. My research focuses on developing point-of-care diagnostic technologies and healthcare systems that improve access to screening and that ensure people get the information they need to get treatment. One of our approaches has been to integrate early screening tests with vaccination and immunization programs. We have developed point-of-care diagnostic technology that can be deployed as part of those programs, so that in the same visit, a baby may also have some genetic testing. But what we realized was that, even more importantly, we need to determine what we do with the information we get from diagnostic testing. Oftentimes, the results can be overwhelming for the caregiver and for the family. So we build smart algorithms to help present the information in a way that ensures the best outcome for the patient in terms of continuing care. We are paying attention to all these important details so that the tests are simple, robust, and the data are shared in a proper way. Today, our technology is available in 30+ countries. We have delivered more than 500,000 tests in Africa and India, and we estimate that we have already saved thousands of lives, which would otherwise be at risk. What is special about being at Case Western is that our projects can bring in scientists, engineers, clinicians, and healthcare workers in a way that is collaborative and multidisciplinary. I know that I can find almost any expertise and any discipline here. If you want to start a project, all you have to do is knock on someone's door, get some coffee, and you start a conversation. And we have tremendous support for translation research programs like the Case Culture Translation Research Partnership, the Clinical and Translational Science Collaborative, and others. These funding opportunities make translation research possible. There are so many people in the world who are suffering from solvable problems. That should not be the case. We have the ability to help them, and it is our job to make it happen.
Next, we have Professor Ralph Harvey. Ralph, please join us. Congratulations, Ralph. That's wonderful. Let's have a photo.
I was a child of the space age, so planetary science came naturally to me. It was a form of science mixed with exploration, which I love, and I found the young and open nature of it exciting. Seeing things never seen before with little context meant having to sort through multiple hypotheses and never being certain of anything. Every day exploring how the bits and pieces work together and how they evolve. All these first-order big-picture questions very attractive to me. There's nothing incremental about it. You need the courage to be wrong, and yet you keep looking for answers anyway. A successful planetary geologist has to know enough to be dangerous across the whole span of the natural sciences. You have to be able to mix chemistry and astronomy and physics and geology and biology and even history while still keeping your mind open enough to processes that might be fundamentally alien. Planetary materials serve as a factual anchor amongst all of these endless planetary possibilities. A rock in your hand or in your lab is a record of geological processes that you can read and study and, importantly, share with different people who might have diverse approaches. I've enjoyed unraveling the story of rocks both big and small, from cosmic dust barely visible to the naked eye to outcrops of ancient Earth rocks many miles across. Meteorites have told me stories from the origins of the solar system and their time in the asteroid belt and even the environmental history of Mars. The need for more such stories led to decades of work in Antarctica, a place alien enough in its own right. And when that didn't provide the rocks needed to answer some questions, we used careful experiments to make some more. We've made Venus in a bottle with NASA Glenn's GEAR facility, subjecting volcanic rocks to the hellish physical and chemical conditions of that planet's surface. And we've cooked rocks in brine to try and understand what's going on deep underneath Mars's surface. We've made tiny little anvils and hammers out of meteorites to explore the fundamental stickiness of asteroidal materials. We've even tried to send a little tiny spacecraft out to a little tiny asteroid to see how it flexes and spins in the sunshine. While snooping around on Mars for the source of those Martian meteorites, we serendipitously discovered an astonishing crater named Jezero and suggested NASA send a rover there, and that's where NASA's Perseverance rover is roaming today. It's been astonishing fun to explore our solar system this way, made dramatically more so by all the wonderful students who have joined in on the fun. And I'm extremely grateful to be at Case Western Reserve University, where running off in wild new directions is encouraged, and doing something nobody's done before is considered a very good thing.
Next is Bob Kirsch. Bob, please.
My research has focused on restoring arm movements to individuals with complete upper limb paralysis from high-level spinal cord injuries. To do this, we use a technology called functional electrical stimulation, or FES. We're also developing high-performance user command interfaces that connect the brain to these prostheses. These interfaces enable the person to actually control the movements of their arms and hands simply by thinking about the movement. If we can come up with a solution for these individuals, then someday they can experience restored functional movement that will enable them to perform routine daily activities. Importantly, they'll also regain part of their independence. As it stands today, many are typically unable to move or feel below their shoulders, and sadly, the rehabilitation options are very limited. So the FES technology is an implanted system that uses small, artificially generated electrical currents. These currents are applied to a combination of arm and hand muscles or to the associated peripheral nerves. The currents generate muscle contractions that power movements. To initiate and control the movements, we take recordings from areas of the brain that control these movements. We then process the recordings to extract signals from the brain that are related to the movements that the person intended to make. These brain-derived movement intention signals are then sent to the FES system, which coordinates the electrical stimulation of several muscles to provide the intended functional movements. What's really special about this work is that we consider the patients to be collaborators on these research projects. In many cases, we've been working with individuals for years, so they become members of our research team. In addition to my work at the university, I'm also fortunate to serve as the executive director of the Cleveland FES Center, which is a collaboration of researchers, engineers, and clinicians from Case Western Reserve University, Metro Health Medical Center, the Cleveland VA Medical Center, University Hospitals, and the Cleveland Clinic. We're a team of 85 principal investigators who are all doing all sorts of things related to this research. It's a special place, and I'm so grateful for the university's support. I also lead the Case Coulter Translational Research Partnership, which fosters collaborations among clinicians and engineers on translational research projects that have the potential to impact patient care. All of this is to say that Case Western Reserve provides a rich and creative environment for neural engineering research of this type. Truly, it's probably the best in the country. I've benefited from excellent mentors and great colleagues here, and I look forward to more good work ahead.
And last and certainly not least is Shin-Ki. Shin, please.
Many of us in the United States know someone whose life has been impacted by neurodegenerative disease, maybe Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington, or ALS. My own grandfather had Alzheimer's. There are so many people suffering from neurodegenerative disease and so many people looking for a solution for their loved one. That is what we are trying to do. We want to find a treatment for it. Our research focuses on the cellular and molecular mechanisms involved in neurodegenerative disease. Specifically, we are trying to understand what role that mitochondria play in the initiation and the development of a neurodegenerative disease. Mitochondria is a critical subcellular organelle that produce more than 90% of energy for cells. But there are a lot that we don't know about the mitochondria. For example, we know that mitochondrial damage is a factor in the development of many human diseases, including neurodegenerative disease. But we don't know whether mitochondrial damage is a cause of or a secondary consequence of these diseases. We also do not know if the targeting mitochondrial damage is a useful strategy in developing therapeutics. So that is what we are trying to figure out. Ultimately, our goal is to develop a mitochondrial target medicine that can be useful treatment for neurodegenerative disease. We use a lot of multidisciplinary approaches like genomics, proteomics, patient-derived stem cells, and diseased animals to try to understand the basic fundamental mechanisms of mitochondrial defects in neurodegenerative disease. There is also a translational research component to our work that involves using a rationally designed peptide to develop a mitochondrial medicine as a therapeutic strategy for the treatment of neurodegenerative disease. I have been at Case Western Reserve University since 2011. Everyone here has been so collegial and so supportive of science. My lab has gotten so much support from leadership. We have gotten infrastructure support and intellectual support. I love working here.
Congratulations to our winners. We're going to do a group shot.
It's like a wedding.
No hugging.
No.
Put your hands to yourself.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks, everyone. Congrats. Wonderful. Well, what a terrific group. Such a distinguished honor for me. Let me now turn to our keynote speaker, Professor Vladimir Bulovich. I first met Dr. Bulovich when we were doing our homework, our due diligence, for the new upcoming interdisciplinary science and engineering building. We reached out to the founding director of the building of MIT Nano, and I hope you all know what MIT Nano is. A fabulous, amazing building for, obviously, nanoscale technologies. Dr. Bulovich was extremely warm, inviting, and helpful and kind in sharing what he thought about the architecture, the architects, what we were trying to do, and I was deeply grateful. Following that, I had the opportunity to visit with him and others, and with some venture capital kind of people who were interested in some of the notions he had about innovation. It was a very small room and small meeting. And I think it's fair to say that Associate Vice President Steve Fenning and I left giggly because of his amazing presentation and thoughts on innovation and just what it means to do this kind of work, to solve problems at scale. And Professor Bulovich doesn't know it, but we left saying he's got to come for Innovation Week. And much to our real delight, he's agreed to come and share with us his thoughts. So as President Kaler mentioned, Dr. Bulovich is a professor of electrical engineering at MIT. He's also the founding director of MIT Nano. MIT's, of course, nano fabrication, characterization, and prototyping facility. He's a fellow of the National Academy of Inventors with over 120 patents. He co-founded startup companies, this really matters, that employ more than 350 people. That's tremendous impact in this world. These include Ubiquitous Energy Incorporated, which develops nanostructured solar technologies, Cativa Incorporated, which focused on development of printed electronics, and QD Vision, which was acquired in 2016 to produce quantum dot optoelectrical components. Cool. These companies have produced products that have been used by millions. For his passion in teaching, Dr. Bulovich has been recognized at MIT of the Mac Vicker Fellowship, the highest teaching award at that prestigious institution. So I am personally thrilled, and I hope you'll join me in being collectively thrilled to welcome Vladimir to the stage. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah. It's an honor to be with you. President Keeler, you have an extraordinary set of faculty that you lead, and indeed, I'm going to do my very best to live up to what was just presented by these amazing videos. Congratulations to you for incredible work you're doing. Again, Vice President Oakes, thank you so much for inviting me. It is indeed my privilege at MIT to think about what do we do next. I was, for a period of about 5 years, the Associate Dean for Innovation. My job was to actually figure out, is there a rhyme and reason to the way we invent things? MIT does well in inventing and launching technologies. We are very lucky in the ecosystem that has been built over the last 40 years, and the expectations our students put upon us as they step into that ecosystem. What I find the key to actually building new ideas is not just one thing here and there. It is indeed the village that sits around it. It is the support that one can give and build into the next set of grand ideas. So my goal for next little bit of time is just to tell you a few learnings that myself and my colleagues at MIT came up with as we spend those 5 years asking questions on, is there a rhyme and reason how innovation happens, or is it just simply chance and who knows, things happen here and there. It cannot be a chance, because there are a few places in the universe that are particularly good at innovating. And if you can figure out how to export their best learnings, others could go ahead and harvest them and bring the next set of great ideas forward. So I'm going to try doing that. Of course, I was told once by another colleague at MIT, he said, you know, learning innovation is kind of like learning how to ski. I can give you a book on how to ski. I can say, you know, buy yourself a pair of skis, find a hill that has some snow on it, climb on top of the hill, start going down, shift your weight to the left, shift your weight to the right. I just taught you how to ski, okay? So same thing here. You're about to hear a few rules and regulations on how innovation happens, but mind you, I'm not sure it's going to be enough. Until you actually get yourself into the process, until you try out a few things, it's going to be very hard to truly embrace every single aspect of what I'm about to kind of show you. It does take a trial and error, and it does take patience and willingness of your community to support you as you push things forward. So my goal is to tell you about how to maybe accelerate innovation and go from a lab to million hands. And I say a million because it's a good number. Easy one to pronounce, easy one to think about. And at that point, you know you actually made a difference. At that point, you know that your technology truly is affecting. I do want to describe, though, some nomenclature here. There is invention, and then there is innovation. Invention is the moment that you discover a new idea. Innovation is the journey that you need to follow to take that grand idea into something that truly can be useful for people. And among us engineers, me being one of them clearly, I'll tell you that invention is only a quarter of success. The 3 quarters that follows is the key to actually making a difference. And recognizing that is really important. I'll outline some of those as well. So here, first thing maybe to do, as you think about hard tech ideas, how long do they take to actually mature and become something that the world can use? And let's start with a very nascent technology. So the very first thing I want to show you is just a simple example of launching a new idea. And let's start with a simple one that's a zipper. Invented in roughly 1913, that's the first useful modern patent. By 1925, you have 1 million boots using a zipper. Fantastic technology, better than a button, but it takes 12 years to scale. Why is that? Like, what's so difficult about the zipper, for goodness sake? It has just small mechanical parts that need to be put together precisely next to other small mechanical parts. Maybe that's the problem. Because back in the 1913, there were no tools to make small mechanical parts and put them exactly where they need to be next to other small mechanical parts, unless you were a watchmaker. And if you were a watchmaker, you would not be making things that affordably can be given to 1 million people, certainly not on someone's boots. It looks like the foundry of making those small mechanical parts and hence making zippers was missing. How about something a little more advanced, middle of the 20th century, Velcro technology. Brilliant technology. Again, avoids the button, avoids the zipper. It actually gives you a technology of fastening that takes about 13 years to scale. Again, why? And the answer is the same. Plastics were a brand new idea in the middle of the 20th century. And extruding a plastic to make a little curvy tip that can catch other curvy tips was certainly not the first priority of those making plastics. If you wanted to make it, nevertheless, you needed to make machines and figure out the extrusion process, understand the polymer science, figure out how does chemistry work down on the nanoscale so you can go ahead and make yourself the most awesomest fastener that then the Apollo astronauts can utilize. It did help to actually have the space missions to advertise these cool technologies. So it does actually matter if you have a foundry to build the next set of ideas. And it will be a journey of about 10 years or more whenever you invent something brand new in a lab. I do highlight the fact that, you know, when Archimedes said, "Eureka, eureka," he invented something. To actually use it broadly took a little while longer. Invention and innovation are separate things, and we often mix them because the words sound kind of similar. But innovation is the journey, and don't forget it in a process. Let me bring us maybe to the end of the 20th century and kind of maybe more modern technologies one would see. Because maybe everything I've shown you in early 20th century, mid 20th century, maybe doesn't hold now anymore. Unfortunately, it does. Strained silicon technology took innovation journey of about 13 years. And mind you, all you need to do is not use the silicon wafer, but use a silicon wafer that has a few germaniums inside it that strains the bonds and consequently separates heavy from the light holes, speeding up your transistors. All you need to do is just go ahead and use a different wafer, put it in the same machines, and you'll get yourself what you can sell as a much faster microprocessor. Well, it still took 13 years to convince people to test those machines, to test those foundries with these new materials. Step into the 21st century and we have discovered something known as high-K dielectrics. All they are is rather than using silicon dioxide, we can use hafnium oxide. It's a higher dielectric material and consequently you can use lower voltage to turn on and off your transistors. 1/2 CV squared, you might remember, gives you the energy that you need to spend in your switching of a transistor. Lower the voltage, and you can quadratically reduce the energy you're going to be spending. Really good idea. It took about 10 plus years for anyone to actually adapt. Because again, there are no foundries that had been tested with these materials, although you just changed one little step in the process. I highlight this to make sure that you realize that when you invent something in a lab, and people come up to you and says, "Those solar cells you just made, those are incredible. When do we get them to see them on the market?" The answer should be 2033, is the right moment. Because before that, there is a journey of adapting and figuring out how to take the technology, how to make it into a productable technology, how to put together a team that can truly understand how to scale up the manufacturing. And even if you have the best of ideas, how do you actually have the stakeholders who need to work with you to adapt this technology? How do you hone them into making an amazing idea with you? I'll cite one idea, not that I really like citing this particular idea, because I really respect Segway as a technology. It's an amazing technology, but the stakeholders have not been consulted about how to adapt it. It can't go on bike roads because it's electrical. It can't go on the roadways because it's smaller than a car. So where do you drive it? That wasn't considered in a process of launching Segway as an amazing, fantastic new technology. And consequently, it's not really reached its peak potential ever, right, compared to what it might have if we have realized ways to maybe readapt it. Just another example of what it does take to actually put together an idea that could be truly, truly impactful. So what I would like to emphasize kind of as a takeaway from this part is you need a foundry, and it takes 10 plus years to convert to impact. Today, in the microelectronics industry, you might have been hearing of the CHIPS Act, you might have been hearing of United States maybe falling behind Taiwan, TSMC, and Samsung's from South Korea in making the next generation of the bestest and the bestest chips. And the answer is indeed that is the case, because if you look historically, to make smaller and smaller transistors, people have needed more and more expensive and more sophisticated tools to the point where, gosh, today there are really 2, maybe with Intel trying 3 companies that can do it. And indeed, the drive for this particular market need is entirely about the volume. If it's going to cost you that much to make something that complex, and by the way, the microprocessors of today are the most complex technologies humans have ever made, given the complexity of the things we put together and the precision of nanoscale patterning we needed to invent. The actual market driver is incredibly stifling for the rest of us. And as a result, if I look today and what academia needs to do, we are in tremendous disadvantage in figuring out how do we truly help industry in making the next stride of the microelectronics advancements. We at academia are very excited to make one-off, a gizmo, a very complex looking gizmo, but a gizmo that's just one-off, versus industry that is focused on very complex integrated systems and are looking at ways of streamlining that scale production rather than perfecting an entirely new discovery. Indeed, what we see is the startups are the key element in figuring out how do we go from that grand discovery to something that could be maybe given one day to industry. I'll tell you in another way why that is. But before I do, I'll give you an exemplar of a technology. If you want to reinvent technology from scratch, it does take a long time. And organic LEDs, those are the screens that are on your cell phones. At least 49% of all the cell phones have these screens, OLED screens on them. Well, those are using semiconductors you have not necessarily been usually using. Molecules, carbon-based molecules. You can almost eat them without poisoning yourself, given the fact it's basically carbon-based structures. These, if electrically excited, will glow. Just like, don't do this at home, but you can look at YouTube, you can find a video of people taking a pickle, sticking 2 forks in a pickle, applying 110 volts, and the pickle will start glowing as you're generating excited states of sodium that are relaxing and luminescing. If you slice the pickle very, very thin, I'll keep this together. If you slice the pickle very, very thin, you can then, rather than applying 110 volts, get away with 5 volts and making it glow. And that's really what OLEDs are. It's a good industry, but one that uses a semiconductor no one has ever touched before. And consequently, it took about 25 years to actually scale this into a useful technology. Well, what's needed to scale OLEDs. Because after all, if you look at the energy use per area, OLEDs are remarkable. They're using less power than plasma TVs, if you've ever heard of those. LCDs, you know of those. Or rear projection TVs, anyone heard of those? I mean, those are old technologies. OLEDs are thinner, lighter, crisper, super high contrast, super thin, ultra fast, pure color, curvable. Awesome. With an Achilles heel. No one knows how to make them in an actually scalable way. You need an entirely new large area nanofabrication process. Now, if you approach industry giants of today and tell them, listen, there's a $120 billion industry of displays. You can capture at least a third of it, 40 billion. All you need to do is build a really good tool to go ahead and do it. Well, no one actually did it. No one even tried to do it. Until you found a few students in the lab who listened, oh man, this sounds like a really cool thing. Things that glow get people excited, right? So OLEDs glowing get you very quickly pulled in. And they're like, well, so we should make some tools to actually make these things for real. And you're like, well, you know, you're going to use a semiconductor no one ever used. You need to make it big, like silicon wafer is this big. TV needs to be this big. And you need to make like 8 TVs at once. So it needs to be this big if you're actually going to make these tools. You're going to use thicknesses of layers that are not fraction of a micron, but actually a couple of nanometers thick, with the accuracy of few molecular layers being all that makes or breaks the value of technology, because the consumers apparently have good enough eyes to pick 2% difference in brightness between a good pixel and a bad pixel. Oh, and by the way, every pixel needs to work. Because apparently you do not want to buy TVs with bad pixels for some reason. I mean, as an engineer, I'm really upset about it, right? Because you are willing to buy Pentium or Itanium or whatever M2 chips. In those chips, 10% of transistors don't work very well. That's why some of them are not 3 gigahertz, but are only 2 gigahertz machines. No one ever aimed to make a 2 gigahertz chip. That's the one that has a lot of bad transistors. But you're okay with that. But you're not okay with buying TVs that have bad pixels. So go ahead and invent a manufacturing technology that gives you yields never previously done on any electronics device over areas never previously imagined, using semiconductors never previously used. If anyone rational is being offered that as an option, they'll say, of course not, I'm not going to do that. But if you look at the students of today, they will say, well, is it impossible? Well, no, it's not impossible. It's improbable that you can actually get there. But if it's not impossible, let us try it. If there's a chance 1 in a million, there is still a chance. So give it time, give it a lot of calculation and guided views on what could and couldn't be done. And you have students build things like this. This is a machine known as YieldJet. It prints organic thin films. It actually was started in a little startup company called Cativa back in 2008. 6 years later, they actually delivered their very first tool. And oops, can turn off the sound. The tool itself is a printer. It just dispenses via million inkjet printers precise 25 micron pixels, 5 microns in accuracy over 3 meter size substrates in 75 seconds, because that's all the time you have. For a particular layer. The result of it is that in 2016, 8 years after the company was founded, the first 100 million cell phones were encapsulated using this technology. And that's Jerry Chen, who stands in front of that red frame next to him is the size of the biggest piece of glass their machines can now make. Indeed, the market itself has grown to about 38 billion. If you have a cell phone in your hand that has an OLED screen, it's more likely than not that it was printed using Cativa tools. It took a while to make this technology really, really work. But a lot of cleverness in the design of it makes it actually nearly impossible to copy their machines now. There's a lot of inline processing. There's a lot of inline monitoring that allows them to have that needed precision and the needed yields. So they started small in the upper left, and then as you keep going through the years, their machines now occupy about a quarter of this room, would be the size of one machine, to go ahead and get whatever work they need to get done. And they don't just print OLEDs anymore, but they can also print quantum dots. Why? Because you have seen QLED TVs, quantum dot technology that Samsung now sells, also invented at MIT, also perfected, but now also dispensed using Cativa tools to enable them to make this next generation of possibilities. Quantum dots themselves, they are small, they are little chunks of stone. Again, new material. And because it's new material, people are not paying attention to it, right? Because otherwise, you would say, how do I match to silicon? Well, this is not silicon. This is just a glowing chunk of matter that happens to be a few nanometers in size. Choose the size and you'll change the color that you observe. Again, a journey of quantum dot materials is about 30 plus years before people start first using it in large scale. First times you see million QLED television sets being sold. The first options for this QLED technology really was not TVs, but rather light bulbs. You can make a beautiful color light bulb. Very expensive, beautiful color light bulb. And when gallium nitride LEDs were $40 a light bulb back in 2009, it was a fine business to be in, because 5% of $40 is $2 per light bulb. That's a lot of money for your quantum dots. As the LEDs became cheaper, that business goes away. And you are looking for a more expensive light bulb. You realize every TV has a light bulb. It's a fairly sophisticated light bulb, but I can make it even a little more sophisticated using my quantum dots, making colors that much brighter, that much nicer, that much more saturated. And as a result, I can maybe outdo the next display. Indeed, launched in 2013 through Sony and then eventually acquired in 2016 by Samsung. This particular technology is still growing, and it will eclipse or at least match OLEDs as time goes on. But the benefit of it, again, is in the hands of millions and can allow you to make the yet another way of thinking of what could be done. These are all driven by students. Yes, they're invented in my labs. Yes, they are invented at MIT, but that is not the strength of it. The strength of it is the students that trained on that technology and then recognized the opportunity of that technology to make the next best thing out of it. The students look at this and see their work as the best thing since sliced bread. And as a result, they see it as the thing that they don't need to be paid to do. It's the thing they want to do with passion. And passion is needed because, heck, I guess the way to think of it, I was asked many years ago, I was talking to a CTO of a relatively large European company in the bucolic parts of Europe. And he was telling me how he would like to launch an innovation center. And he said, you know, I'm going to have this beautiful place in the middle of the woods and people are going to go there and do the innovation. And I said, well, I don't think you can succeed. And he's like, well, why? You didn't even like learn what I wanted. I'm like, well, listen, your people right now, you took me through the village. Last night we had a dinner. It's a beautiful little village with a little town square with a picket fences. Everyone has a little house. You're going to tell those people, listen, tomorrow you don't have a job in my company anymore. Tomorrow you're going to be an innovator, an entrepreneur. Here is a building you can sit in. Yeah, you might need to work 16 hours a day, maybe 6 days a week. And you know, there's a 20% chance that in 5 years you might start breaking even on what you're doing. Go ahead, quit your job now, do that. That's very hard to convince someone to do. But if every year our universities fire a quarter of our best intellectuals, our students who just graduated, they're on a cliff. They're on a precipice. They need the next job. They need the next thing to do, and they will plunge into innovating the next set of ideas. At MIT, our numbers are about quarter to a third of all of our students will end up in a startup or launch a startup. And it is that. It is the fact that we train them to reinvent the world. They look at the world of today, they say, well, there is nothing for me to reinvent here. I want to go ahead and build something entirely new. And that something new is in what I was working on. So we are seeing this incredible drive, and let's nurture it. Let's figure out how to support it to make the next set of grand ideas. So I want to spend just a little time differentiating between the practice of innovation and actual, let's start calling it the science of innovation, because there is a rhyme and reason why we innovate and why we are where we are. I mentioned it takes 10 years to build anything out of physical objects if you don't have a foundry for it. If you do have a foundry like a silicon chip, you can do it in a year, but that's because we spent 40 years building the foundries for it. If you want to launch an app, you can do it in 6 months to a year because we have a foundry for it and distribution process known as the Apple Store and HTML, internet, and so on, right? So if you are building on a foundation of something that already exists, you can do it quickly. If you need to build it from scratch, and most transformational ideas are built from scratch, it's a decade journey. And historically, that journey used to be divided like this. You started first 3 years at a university, you gave a talk at some notable conference, someone from IBM or Lucent Technologies came up to you and said, this is great, can we take the technology and actually develop it next 7 years inside a corporate lab so we can then launch production 10 years altogether, right? That's broken, that doesn't work anymore. And the reason why it's broken is because the risk is very, very high until about year 8, when things are looking really good and all that's needed is to build a final tool set you're going to be able to scale up with. You can also plot on this the investment. Initially you need to invest a little bit and trickle into the research and engineering. And the moment you say, I'm going to commit to building the prototyping facility, yeah, you need to put a chunk of money into that. And that's that big bump roughly around year 8. So here's a question. What is a lifespan of an average CEO in an existing multinational company? If you look through numbers, it's about 6.9 years. They don't have a 10-year horizon to look towards. They have a 5-year horizon to look towards, or a 3-year horizon to look forwards. So to them, rightfully, because they're looking at ways of building the company in the time they can influence it, they don't have the patience, or call it the perfect match, to what it truly takes to build new hard tech ideas. It's no fault of their own, it's just the way the system is put together. So here is what's happening now. Basically, corporations have pulled towards the later years of an idea, something that's already been proven and tested and maybe even prototyped. So they can go ahead and say, I would like to now scale it and produce it. And those middle years are gone. They're left to someone else being the startups. The startups are the key driver of the next set of ideas. The startups are the key innovation element in the United States in the way we're doing it. And we happen to be incredibly well positioned in the US to truly reinvent the next world. We have the best universities. We have the largest venture capital community that annually invests over $150 billion in good ideas. I'm sure they invest a lot of that money in hard tech ideas, right? So the answer is no. About 1% to 3%, depending on who you ask, of the venture capital investment goes into the hard tech ideas. And you're like, well, wait a second, didn't I just tell you I have the best ideas in the world? I have like all these amazing students develop. I mean, how come VCs are so nearsighted? I mean, how come they can't? They're not nearsighted. They're actually doing exactly the right thing. From their perspective, they can invest that money in many different places. And the only way they're going to invest money in you is if you can tell me that in 5 years, you'll triple the money I gave you. But wait, you need 10 years? That's 3 times 3. I need you to tenfold increase the money I gave you if it's going to take you 10 years to build your idea. Years 2023, listen, can you give me like 10 million bucks and I'll get you 100 million in year 2033? Trust me, right? Well, is that investable? The answer is no, it's really not investable. It's really hard to figure out how to do that. And so the key to us, thinking about all these very challenging parameters, is this growing gap is really based on 2 things. There is lack of accessible advanced tool sets and infrastructure that industry has. And there is absence of patient capital for scaling ideas through startups. So what do we do to actually make a difference? That's where MIT Nano, the facility we built right in the heart of MIT campus, is aimed in part to deliver, connecting academia to the startup culture. We built a facility to make sure it's evergreen and for everyone. So we made sure no professor has an office in this building, including the director, because I should be easily replaced if needed, and the whole community should use us as they need to. So we have prototyping spaces, clean room spaces, imaging metrology spaces, accessible by anyone, and startups included. So here is just a motley bunch of faculty and students developing through the Engine, which is one of the local venture funds, whole bunch of ideas. Many of them utilize MIT Nano to do their work. And they are bridging 3 valleys of death to survive. There is the first valley of death with survivability maybe of 10% is what we refer to as the valley of the idea, finding stakeholders that share your vision and will give you that seed money to get you going. The next valley of death that maybe a quarter of the remaining companies maybe bridge is the valley of the prototype, gaining market traction with the idea so that it looks like maybe we should make a prototype out of it. And then finally, maybe a third of the companies bridge the next value of that, which is a value of scalability. Now multiply all those numbers, you'll realize very few companies survive in that. Our goal was, is there a way for us to make this journey of 10 plus years and $100 million, by the way, that's what it takes. Never ever in the history of humanity have we built brand new technology for less than $100 million. So if you give me 100 million now, you expect $1 billion 10 years from now. Oh, that's a lot to ask for. Is there a way to bridge it? And the answer is yes. If I can make it easier for you to access the cool tool sets, so you don't have to hire the chemical safety officer and the liquid nitrogen tank installation, and you can go ahead and not worry about getting the evaporator and the etcher and a microscope, because I already have it at the university in a shared facility that anyone can access. That can dramatically save you the costs. The other thing I wonder is if I can consequently make it so that with much less money you can get yourself through those first 5 years. Of the $100 million journey, first 5 years are about 15 million, and the remaining 5 years are 85 million. I'm looking to shrink that 15 million number to maybe 3 by giving you all these options and matching essentially university needs to your startup needs. If a third to a quarter of my students are going to end up being entrepreneurs, I need to teach them that in a classroom. It cannot be just a thing that happens on its own. It's just as important as me teaching you computer science, math, biology. And yet we don't have a formalized way of doing it because you need to see someone do it. Well, gosh, these startups sitting in my labs doing stuff in a central facility, what a better teacher. I mean, I can tell you about them at the classroom, but seeing your friend Joe and Megan start a company and seeing them a year after still surviving and having a job, that's much more inspiring than me ever telling you about startups. So we are looking at ways of providing you facilities to dramatically change the cost structure, hopefully fill some of that valley, make them a little shallower. You still need the angel investor, but not as much money. We need to also teach you about the 4 elements, the solution, the production, the team, the stakeholders, all those we need to prepare you with. And then we need to make sure you can easily access the space. So MIT campus consists of 100 buildings all connected. We placed this one right in the middle of the campus. Anyone can step into it. In order to really boost innovation, we have it as very simply, if you want to boost innovation, just make sure you bring people together, make sure they have different disciplines, and make sure they talk to each other. If you have those 3 things, you'll spark human friction, and that human friction will lead to new ideas that you could not do on your own. So we have at this point, last year, 1,100 users of the facility. So we're doing well in bringing people together. We bring you the tools, about 150 different tools. We still have a third of a space available for whatever else needs to be built in there. And it is indeed the ecosystem that needs to span every technology readiness level. So yes, at MIT campus, main campus, we can do TRL 1 through 5, but if you really want to do something for real, you need to actually scale it. So if you're doing semi work or superconducting work or such, MIT Lincoln Lab will do it for you, getting you up to that scale. Or we can get you to global foundries, or we can connect you to DuPont, or build an ecosystem around you that consequently allows you to take the best of the ideas that have been prototyped at university and now have a way of actually getting bigger. At this point, we've been open for 4 years to the users, so give me a little more time. But we, at this point, have about 40 companies that utilize us. We're about to accept another 20 into what we refer to as Star.Nano program. Star.Nano program allows us to give every startup a discounted use of the space. And we also are raising additional money to make it even cheaper for them to use it. We give them what we call nanobucks. 1 nanobuck is $1, and you can spend it either on, well, you can only spend it at MIT Nano, but you know, that's the coolest place to do stuff. So I'll conclude by giving you the following driver that led us to where we chose nanoscale as being the governing factor that put us together. School of Science and School of Engineering at MIT are the dominant 2 schools when it comes to our research activities. And I was trying to figure out, who do I ask about where the future of MIT is going? Because I need to build this building to last till the year 2050, usefully, for the campus. Because we figure by 2050, we'll invent anti-gravity and everything will change, right? I mean, so, but before that moment, we need to actually figure out how to give you all the tools you need to make your academic discoveries, and yes, on the side, startups as well. So we figured we can ask all the Nobel Prize winners, but they've already done their thing, right? The coolest people on campus are the young faculty who just got tenure. Because by definition, we just told them you'll have a job for the next 30, 40 years. In year 2050, they'll be around. So asking the young faculty that were recently tenured over the last 10 years, I checked in School of Science and found that 51% of them use nanoscale to make their discoveries. About 34 physically making things and 17% numerically thinking about nanoscale. And in our School of Engineering, about 2/3 of all of our young faculty who recently got tenure use nanoscale to make their discoveries in chemical, biological, electrical, mechanical, civil engineering, and on. In which disciplines? Medicine, life sciences, energy systems, computing, manufacturing, materials and structures, quantum science, technology. Of course, underlined, all in the service of education for a very simple mission: to build a better world. Thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it. Thank you.
15 minutes. We have about 15 minutes for some Q&A. We have microphones on either side. And so if you'd like to ask some questions, please identify yourself and ask us short questions. Thank you.
I can also riff on anything else if you have any thoughts. The hardest thing, what I find in the day-to-day existence at MIT, is to choose what not to do. And it's entirely driven by the students. We also never go by our professor this or dean that. We always go by first names, because it's very likely the student talking to you is way smarter than you are. And consequently, you better listen and then answer as wisely as you can as a colleague rather than as a professor. Please, we started there.
Hi, thank you. Okay, that was a very inspirational talk.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question for you. So we have a lot of the infrastructure here at CASE as well, but I think one of the things that we struggle with is finding the people to spearhead startups, the CEOs, the people of the entrepreneurial phenotype. Where does that come from in your organization?
We often find it is the cross between a business person and a technical person. So if there is a local business school to kind of attract people to and do some mixers where you go ahead and feed them some pizza and cookies and have them, there's going to be a great poster session, which I love the concept of 2-minute pitch followed by posters. Well, why not do the same thing with some startup ideas? As a matter of fact, at MIT, because again, over the last 40 years, we built this humongous ecosystem around Kendall Square and so forth. So we attract a variety of individuals. So in our School of Management, for example, we have a class called the I-Teams. And what it is the engineering professors or medical science professors come to the class and make a pitch. And they say, I invented this. I think it could be scalable. The class listens for the first 2 weeks. And then the class teams in the groups of 5 to 6 students and select of the 20 ideas they heard, 7 they're going to pursue. And then they spend the entire class semester developing business plans, making phone calls, checking with customers. The final project is put out the actual presentation on if you were pitching this as a company, how would it look? That's academic, but it's bordering actually developing a business plan that could be truly useful. And many startup companies at MIT actually use that as a way of cheaply developing a business plan, because you get an academic credit for the students, and the professor ends up with a presentation that is half the time really good in getting you ideas in where to go. And through that, now you start attracting the VC community to kind of listen in. It's like, maybe there is something here. And they start approaching professor and say, well, do you want to do something with this? Because if you do, we invested previously in startups and one was just sold, so the CTO of that and CEO of that startup is now ready to do something else. So it is building the ecosystem. It's not overnight. It's not like there is someone you can plug, but you need to prepare people just like that, I think. At least that's what worked for us. Please.
Wonderful lecture. I work in biologics, which has different rules and different boundary conditions. And in speaking to venture capitalists, I asked them who, in your mind, would be the best CEO for a startup. And their CEOs, they have said in their own way that the best CEO would come from 3 failed startups. and that's indeed been my experience, that in the biologics, startups live and die by one variable and one variable only, not the technology, but by the management team. And why do you believe that a hybrid who has business experience but is also a techie would make a good CEO? Because I can tell you, when I put on my fancy wool suit and try to pass as a CEO, the venture boys don't buy it.
No, I hear you. Venture capitalists are pattern matchers. You need to have the right set of people walk in the room. A young entrepreneur, a young technologist, that's a good start, but that's not enough. You need to have a professor who understands technology also in the room, and you have to have an angel investor, seasoned guy who's invested before. You have those 4 people in a room, you are more likely to get your round A or seed round of funding. They're pattern matchers, right? And consequently, I do teach classes of innovation, and I say, well, the one thing I can tell you is that yes, your technology is great, but make sure you go to the gym today so that you look more vigorous, so you look more youthful and projecting enthusiasm. Practice your speech a little bit more. Give yourself, a stance that says, I have charisma, I know where I'm going, the world is my, So there's no value there except the fact that there is this particular perceptions that those who have means to support next technologies are judging imperceptibles that really don't matter for the value of technology. So I don't know how to answer except to say you need to choose just the right pattern suit, tweed jacket, to actually get that extra excitement. I also do find that most of the young companies don't really need a seasoned CEO. Most young companies for the first 3 years need a really enthusiastic young CEO. They will, no matter how well they're doing, in year 3 or 4 or 5, when company starts doing well, the board, investment board will say, we need to replace you. You're doing great, but you look too young. We need someone who appears a little bit more seasoned. Consequently, let's bring someone else in, and we'll make you the president, or we'll make you the CTO, so you can still be around to actually truly run the company from behind.
I would just make one addition, which is in biologics, we're faced with huge headwinds from big pharma, who has taken the capitalistic model for business and has driven it down our throats, and that unfortunately becomes the boundary conditions in which we have to function. So it's physics is wonderful, and I love your talk, but biologics is has other boundary conditions, and is very hard to take innovation and bring it into the marketplace in this context.
I entirely agree with you. There are, because of it being so bounded, there are accelerators like BioX or Lab Central is a space that you can use if you're a biologist. So there are, because of that, these cookie cutting, molding kind of formats to step into that are a little bit better defined than these random molecules, quantum dots kind of device technologies that can be anything. And yes, you can say it's liberating, but at the same time, it's bewildering on what you might need to do if you're starting a new space. So yes, biologics does have its own constraints, including the NIH, all the approvals that are needed in order to get the new medicine in. But keep at it. We need it. Please.
That's kind of the perfect segue into the question. You taught us very well today about the dynamic in which there is between the de-risking and early function, the amount of capital needed for scale up and to show that it could be done at volume just falls in a gap that doesn't exist. It's too early for VCs. It's too late for universities. If you're successful, will it be on the success of a given company, or will it be on helping create establishing a new class of capital, whether that's to be from public good, but in teaching the world that we need this, there needs to be now capital deployed in this space, because otherwise these things aren't just going to get to society. Is that built into your mission?
It is. I often get asked, what is in it for MIT? And the answer is impact. Because if you use our shared facilities, we have no right to your intellectual property. I just gave you a screwdriver and a wrench. So I didn't invent anything with you. IP is yours. Everything you built is yours. But as a business, right, our job is really simple. We need to generate extremely trained people, and we need to generate knowledge. And the reason why we're doing that is to make impact on the world. If we make impact on the world, the students out there will say, Case did this amazing study. I want to join Case. You would like to come up with ways of making impact that attract the next generation of innovators back to you. That's our business. And so our currency is impact. If I can, through this, indeed demonstrate a way of, doubling the VC investment in hard tech from 1% to 2%, still leaves 98 for everything else, that would be twice as many technologies that the world will have. And if I can, in a process, bring in additional users to these shared facilities, academics will have better tools to work on and more relevant connection to the industry that follows. So I'll build what I need to do as an academic, a better university with better access into how to make impact. And yes, I will, on the side, accidentally call it, build new technologies that will build a better world. It's not really on the side. That is my mission. I just need to keep clear what is my responsibility. Yes, I'm an academic, but an academic that sees that beyond our academic work, we need to help the startups become. And we do have a hand in that as well. This is not an incidental thing that just happens near us. It has to happen because of us. Yeah.
Great talk, as usual. I have a fairly related question. So with the nanobucks and the resources that you provide, that's super important for two things, as you said. One is to reduce the time scale, but also then to reduce the overall investment, which is particularly a big issue being in the Midwest, the amount of investment capital. So that's a really attractive thing. So my question is, you're actually making a significant investment in these startup companies, right? If you're saying you're taking it from a $10 million investment to a $3 million investment, that's a $7 million investment in some capacity. So have you thought about how you sustain that over time? How do you pay for that investment now? And you said you're not taking equity in these companies, but how do you scale that?
Yeah, well, so maybe the way to think of it is slightly differently. It turns out it doesn't cost me anything. I actually make money in a process, which is kind of odd because I'm reducing their money. The way to think of it is when about 15 to 20% of users of MIT Nano are external users, multinational companies and startups and so on. Whenever an academic uses MIT Nano, we spend $1 giving you gold or etching or whatever else. You pay us 50 cents for that. My profit on keeping academics to use the facility is minus 50%. So that's not financially good, but it's the right thing to do because our NSF grants are only so big and I want to make sure you keep making impact. Externals, when they come by, we charge them 150% of our cost, which we need to do because we need to make sure we don't compete with mom and pop shops that have deep reactive ion etcher and are offering that service. There are no mom and pop shops, I'm just saying. But if they do, I need to make sure that I'm not outdoing a for-profit business because I, as a non-for-profit business, is offering a cheaper service. So, but nevertheless, people do come because they like the community, they like being able to hire the students, they like the idea of being exposed to new ideas, they like the services we provide because we have a comprehensive tool sets, and they have nowhere else to go, really, to get all of this, so they do come. So with startups, what we do is we give them at-cost use. They pay 100% of what it truly costs me. So I don't lose money on them, but I do gain the benefit of their presence. And I get additional users. My tools are not being used 24/7. I have plenty of tools that are used a few hours a day because they're very expensive tools that very few people need. But with these extra users, and most external users use the most expensive tools because they can't afford them, so they come to us. That's a way for me to maintain those tools. So consequently, I can buy an upgrade model next year because I have additional user income from externals that allow me to go ahead and update it. So the university is going to do better work. I think it's really just optimizing what already exists and recognizing that the bridge between a non-for-profit and for-profit is, I don't want to blur that. We need to stay not-for-profit with a currency of impact. But if we enable those who are for-profit with eventually building real technology because they prototype them at universities, they can't sell anything they build in MIT Nano. That's not okay. But developing a prototype, like startups do, that's perfectly fine. You're not selling it, you're just figuring out how to build technology forward. So that's our model. And really what we're doing, I think, is getting rid of all the societal inefficiencies. The inefficiency of you building your own facility and hiring your own chemical safety officer and installing your own liquid nitrogen tank. Let's just share. I don't need all my liquid nitrogen. I have it already. Come by, use mine, and pay me a little bit for it, but it's going to cost you less than building your own thing. I mean, we have a $7 million microscope for $150 an hour. You can use it. Or buy yourself a $7 million microscope and put it in a $3 million room and have a $500,000 a year maintenance contract. That's fine as well. Or pay $150 an hour to use it. So it's $150 that hour that I would not get otherwise, right? Yeah, please. Oh, sorry. Let's start over here.
All right. Hello, my name is Yuzhang. I'm a biomedical engineering undergrad here. And, well, I do have a question for you, someone who seems, of course, very experienced in the field of research and, well, everything that goes beyond research, which is delivering the things to the people, which is, I guess, like one of the most important things. But, of course, here in my undergrad, pretty much starting my path, right? I don't really know, which steps to take to get, up there and be the one giving the talk. So, of course, I'm very passionate for research. I have all these crazy ideas and things that I want to invent that, of course, I'm going to try and keep secret because I don't want anyone in this room to steal it from me. But I don't know, I feel like I have all these paths, going to industry, working there, and then coming back and doing research now that I know how it works, or staying in research and then scaling up through a startup and so on. So what would you recommend to someone like me or, any other undergrad? What would be the steps or the path to take to, reach that point where you feel like you have created or, achieved some sort of innovation that has actually helped other people?
Yeah. Well, it turns out that no two humans are the same, and hence the paths that you take to get to satisfaction, happiness, and the vision of who you want to be will be definitely different than what anyone else has ever followed. But we are amazingly good at collecting experiences. And collection of those experiences builds you and makes your decisions. So maybe what you need more of is additional experiences. It turns out that if you ask the most successful entrepreneurs, why did they become an entrepreneur, they will always cite, a grandmother who was running a bake shop, or a grandfather who was a masoner but opened up a new business, or such. There's always a role model, someone they've seen, they've spent time with, they observed and wanted to emulate in some way. And recognizing that maybe you want to spend a little more time around people like that, find a startup and ask them if you can volunteer for them, or find a summer job in a small business and test out what does it take to build it. I think that might give you additional perspectives and also additional recognition of, do you really want to do this? Versus, an existing company has a well-defined mission and needs an extra pair of really good hands to develop the next version of this, and this. Maybe that's more exciting, right? But I think collect more experiences. You just started your journey. You have plenty of time ahead of you. Thank you. Pleasure.
Does this work?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is similar but a little bit different. What advice or wisdom would you give to a young entrepreneur to guide them in the right direction or to help position them to drive change in the future?
Yeah. Do ask yourself a variety of topics that need to be answered to make your technology successful. And again, I break it to just make it simple, to give you just 4 things to think of: solution, production, team, and stakeholders. Do you have a solution that truly can be built? Production, do you have a solution that could be produced at scale? Do you have a team that can actually go ahead and build it? And if you don't, start with one friend, because there's not a single successful company run by one person only. And you need to figure out how to deal with that friend, because there will be moments where you guys will not like each other for a moment or two, but you'll realize you're building something bigger together soon. And then finally, when you have that, your friends, go ahead and start asking yourselves, who are you going to affect by your change that you're bringing? And I'm not talking about a consumer who will actually buy your thing. I'm asking, the moment that you build a car, you need to also ask the town to build you the roads. And you need to have the tire maker figure out how to source the rubber. And you need to, and so on and so forth, right? The stakeholders are those who already have a system of working situations that are going to be strongly affected by you introducing a brand new idea. Presently, a grand present change, for example, is electrification of vehicles. Whoever invented the electric vehicle better have thought about gasoline vehicle makers and how will they be affected. They will be the stakeholders who you need to make sure you bring with you as you move forward. So those are the 4 things that I would ask you to kind of think through and then present it to friends. The best thing you should do is get yelled by your friends, tell you exactly how stupid the idea is, this could be done this way. Because in that little room, that's the time you want to hear the worst statements ever, so that when you step out of it, you have the best answers ever, consequently honing your vision of where things go. But it's not an obvious path, right? Every one of these is essentially a process of discovery. The best ideas are. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.